You know the feeling when you sit down at the chessboard, ready to take on your opponent, and you just know you've got this in the bag. Well, my friends, today I'm going to show you exactly how it's going to go down when you play against those lower-rated players. The match begins with knight f3, d5, d4, e6, and c4. I choose the solid e6 setup, aiming for control over the center with potential counterplay on the queen side. D takes c4 and e3. He opts for a recapture with e3, leading to a semi-Slav defense. This move aims to keep the center flexible, but delays the development of the dark-squared bishop. Knight f6, bishop takes c4 and c5. I strike at the center immediately, which is typical in the Murano variation, challenging his control and aiming to open lines for the minor pieces. Knight c3, a6, castle, and b5. My play on the queen side is aggressive, aiming to push b4, potentially weakening his knight on c3, but also creating counterplay. Bishop d3 and knight bd7. His bishop move is somewhat passive, not challenging the center or preparing for a kingside attack. I continue with natural development. b3, bishop b7, and queen c2. Here, his queen c2 is heavily criticized by the annotator. Placing the queen on c2 does not threaten anything immediately and blocks the rook's access to the d-file, which could have been useful. Bishop b2 would have been better for maintaining pressure on the d5 square and supporting a potential pawn push to e4. Rook c1 and knight g5. This is where his strategy starts to crumble. The knight move to g5 is aimed at harassing my knight and potentially the f7 pawn, but it's misplaced. It does not connect with the rest of his pieces, and I can exploit this. D takes c5 is better to keep the game somewhat balanced but still in my favor. C takes d4, E takes d4, and b4. I open the c-file for the rook, push the b-pawn to expel the knight from c3 and gain a tempo. This move sequence effectively undermines his center. Rook e1 and bishop e7. I wisely avoided capturing on c3, which would have opened the e-file for his rook with checks. Instead, I secure the king and prepare to the castle by hand if necessary. Knight takes f7, a tactical oversight, thinking perhaps to gain material, but this leads to the knight being trapped or exchanged under unfavorable conditions. King takes f7, queen e2, and b takes c3. I capture on c3 now, not because it's the best move, but because it's safe. The king is relatively safe due to the checks being manageable, and the knight on c3 is winning for me. Queen takes the e6 check, king f8, and bishop takes a6. Here, he captures a pawn, but loses significant time and coordination. The bishop on a6 is out of play, and my counterplay on the queen side and center is overwhelming. Bishop takes a6, queen takes a6, knight b8, queen e6, and knight c6. I maneuver to keep pieces centralized, control key squares, and threaten the d4 pawn, which he can't adequately defend. g4 and knight takes d4. I captured the d4 pawn, which is now undefended, and he resigned. This move showcases my superior piece activity and coordination. The game is effectively over as my pieces are poised to invade. His king was exposed with no clear counterplay. I played with a good sense of tactical sharpness, particularly in avoiding premature capture in the middle game that could have backfired, like on c3 was crucial as it avoided opening up his rooks, taking advantage of his inaccuracies, and instead choosing moves that maintained or increased the advantage. My strategy was centered around queenside expansion, central control, and piece coordination. His main errors involved misplacement of knight g5, neglecting development, not playing bishop b2, and capturing on f7 and a6 were pivotal in swinging the game heavily in my favor. Each of these moves contributed to my increasing dominance. My understanding of the position was superior to him, particularly in not rushing to capture material, but instead focusing on strategic advantages like control of the center and king safety. This game serves as a lesson in how opening inaccuracies can lead to middle game blunders, which in turn decide the outcome of the game. My play was near perfect in exploiting these mistakes against lower-rated opponents while maintaining a solid structure and piece activity. So, the next time you find yourself up against a lower-rated opponent, just remember that this is your domain and you're about to put on a chess masterclass they'll never forget.